Gloria al Laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor.
Okay, well, this talk, as I said, is going to be about voluntarism and its manifestation in Islam and its manifestation in Reconstructionist Judaism and its relationship to the father of lies and what it says about God and what it says about religions that teach about a voluntarist God. However, I'm going to start anecdotally. Okay, some of you know that I had the very good fortune, very good providence to reestablish a connection with a very close friend of mine from high school. And by the way, since my conversion, I've basically lost all my pre-conversion friends. So I have a great hunger for having a relationship with somebody who knew me when I was a child or a teenager or a college student and so forth. So anyway, I was very happy to reestablish contact with him. And he read my witness testimony, which talks about my theophany, right? My direct revelation by God, of God, and divine providence and the afterlife and so forth in that revelation, followed by a revelation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And he read about that in my, I guess he Googled me or something. And but he still wanted to get in touch with me, and he still seemed like he wanted to be friendly and reestablish a relationship. So I figured, fine. There were two possibilities. One is that he just thinks I'm a hallucinating schizophrenic, as another rabbi agreed that I must be, that I was delusional, that, out of my own emotional needs or whatever, I had these hallucinations or delusions or whatever, which would be fine with me if somebody thought that, by the way. Or that he thought that there is no objective truth. And, you have your truth, which is true for you, and I have my truth, which is true for me. And truth has no meaning beyond that. Sounds a little like Pontius Pilate, right? What is truth? So I figured, I'll call him Charlie. That's not his name. I'll call him Charlie. So anyway, I figured, one of those two things was what was going on with Charlie. And they were both kind of fine with me, although I preferred him thinking that I was hallucinating schizophrenic than that he would be thinking that there is no such thing as objective truth. But anyway, that was fine. But then in further communication, it became apparent that neither of those two things were the case. He actually had come across a third resolution, or he had, before any contact with me, come to a very interesting idea about God. Here's how he reconciled the disparity between world religions. He decided that God was a liar, and that basically God gave revelations that were genuine revelations to different people depending on what would do them the most good. So if God had discerned that I would be happiest in life being Catholic, he would give me a revelation that confirmed the Catholic faith. And if he decided that Charlie would be happiest being Jewish, then he would give him divine revelation confirming Judaism and so forth. Well, this is very distressing to me, because what it does is, if that's what you believe about God, you can't go anywhere. You just can't go anywhere, in kind of meaningful discussion. So anyway, so that introduces the idea of voluntarism. Voluntarism has a lot of different flavors, and it actually has different meanings in different contexts. We're talking about theological voluntarism, but in the simplest form of theological voluntarism, voluntarism with respect to God, it is the belief that God does whatever he wants and is not tied to rationality, is not tied to non-contradiction, is not tied to honesty, is not tied to constancy. He can do whatever he wants, and he's omnipotent, and to say that he can't do whatever he wants, or there's something wrong with him doing whatever he wants, is to contradict his omnipotence and knock him off his throne. That's basically voluntarism, that it's God's will, and that's enough for it to be right, even if he is a liar. Now, voluntarism in our day and age is most strongly found in Islam. The God of Islam is definitely a voluntarist God. Now, I will read some quotes proving that. And by the way, Benedict XVI almost got his head chopped off, literally, right, with the Regensburg lecture because he brought this up. Now I'm going to be reading some quotes from an article in Catholic World Report about Islam by a Jesuit, James Schall. Now, it is from the collection of contradictory practices and beliefs in the Quran and in Islamic history that Islamic scholars had to develop a theory that would justify these contradictory phenomena and thereby save the religion from evident incoherence. This is true. There are probably hundreds, there are certainly dozens of contradictions in the Quran. Did Allah create the world in 6 days or in 8 days? Did he create man out of dust or out of mud or out of, I think a blood clot was the third thing? Are you allowed to have more than 4 wives? Well, it depends. It turns out that once Muhammad wanted to have more than 4 wives, it was allowed. You can easily find listings of the contradictions in the Quran with chapter and verse if you Google it. Okay. So anyway, so Islam had to develop a theory that could explain away all the inconsistencies and contradictions within Allah in the Quran. And that is the origin of the voluntarism that underlies Muslim views of the cosmos, of man, and of God. Allah can order the opposite of what he ordered before. Otherwise, it is held he would not be all-powerful. Allah's will, not a divine logos, is at the origin of all reality. That's kind of interesting, huh? Allah's will is the foundation of reality. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. In law, this move necessitates a theory that would argue that the last or latest contradiction is the rule until another one comes along. And that is, in fact, the case in Islam, that the later revelations abrogate the earlier revelations. The later truths abrogate the earlier truths. I think it's called the principle of abrogation. Okay. And now I will read another quote about Islam from a site that I respect. At the center of the Muslim doctrine is that Allah's will is known, while the rest of what we would call the divine character is not. One way to think of this is to say that volition, that is willing, and incomprehensibility are the 2 attributes that we do know with certain about God. Okay? He wills things and he is incomprehensible. Those are the 2 things we know about God. One must not pry into the essence of Allah, but only know what Allah requires of mankind. The consequence is that the Muslim mind in contemplating revelation is to be focused simply on the command itself, rather than the divine nature upon which the command is based, or the reason for the command. Okay, so this is really Islam 101 in a way. Now for our great hero, Benedict XVI. This is a quote from his talk at Regensburg University in 2006, which got him in a lot of hot water in the Islamic world. But for Muslim teaching, God is absolutely transcendent. His will is not bound up with any of our categories, even that of rationality. God is not rational. God is not bound even by his own word, and nothing would oblige him to reveal the truth to us. Okay? So that is getting a little along the lines of what Charlie was saying, right? God is not constrained to tell us the truth. He's not constrained to reveal the truth to us. He's perfectly free to give contradictory lies at different times to different people. Now, I would say he is free to, in the sense that he probably has the power to. But is it in his nature to? Doesn't that kind of turn him into the father of lies if it's in his nature to? If God doesn't care about the truth, then it's certainly a lot like the father of lies. Very happy when I found this picture, because a lot of things about it that resonated correctly with me. And it's very interesting that in the Garden of Eden, you have Satan looking kind of friendly and kind of sly and kind of ingratiating, smarmy. And what's he saying? He's saying, oh no, God is a liar. God is a liar. So here we have Islam saying God is a liar. We have Reconstructionist Judaism, when it believes in God, saying God is a liar. It's bad company. Now, on to Reconstructionist Judaism. I'd better start with the history of Reconstructionist Judaism. I hope that doesn't take me too far afield. First of all, Reconstructionist Judaism is a 20th century invention. It was invented in the 1920s and 30s by a Jewish rabbi in New York named Mordecai Kaplan, who did not believe in God, but he didn't want to lose his gig as a rabbi. So he came up with this theology. His main book was called Judaism as Civilization, and the point was that Judaism was a wonderful civilizing force, and the laws of Judaism, the principles of Judaism, the history even in the Old Testament, made for an elevated civilization. That's why it's called Judaism as Civilization. So Judaism is worthwhile not because God exists and not because it's true, but because it's good for civilization. So you already see this almost like it's a flavor of voluntarism, where all that matters is it good for you or bad for you? And if it's good for you, that is, in a way, trumps truth. So even the religion isn't true, but it's just good for you. And therefore, we should hold to it and pretend to believe in it. It's actually very parallel to the way that Charlie interpreted things. So I'll read some quotes that describe Reconstructionist theology. So anyway, so he didn't believe in God. He didn't say for certain that God doesn't exist. He said it's irrelevant whether God exists or not. Whether he exists or not does not affect the value of Judaism. And he did say that God is neither a personal nor conscious being, and that God cannot relate to or communicate with humanity in any way if he exists. That which would say that prayer is totally useless and pointless, right? Except that it makes you feel good within yourself, so you should pray. But there's no God at the other end of prayer. God is neither a personal or conscious being. God cannot relate to or communicate with humanity in any way. God is the sum of all natural processes that allow people to become self-fulfilled. So again, you see, God is a word for everything that helps your self-fulfillment, which therefore means that if I have an imaginary spiritual experience that makes me think Catholicism is true, and believing in Catholicism is good for me, then that imaginary experience came from God, right? Because God is the name for natural processes that allow people to become self-fulfilled. Okay, this is so pathetic. My mentor, when I was an impressionable adolescent, at the time he was just a seminarian, a Jewish seminarian. His name was Artie Green. And while he was my teacher in high school, in religious education, in Hebrew school, religious school, after school program. He was ordained as a rabbi. He ended up being the head of the Reconstructionist seminary in the United States. He ended up being a Reconstructionist rabbi. I don't remember whether he started out as a Reconstructionist rabbi or not, but he heartily embraced Reconstructionism. And he was my guru from when I was 15 to 19, I would say. A very major formative influence. Doesn't speak well for me. I will give, now I'm going to play a 2-minute clip. So here I am with my former guru. This is Artie Green. This was my guru from like 10th grade of high school. So when I was about 15 until I was about 19, he was my religious education teacher. And I thought he walked on water, not literally, but I definitely, he definitely was my guru and mentor and so forth. And he became a Reconstructionist rabbi and the head of the Reconstructionist seminary in the United States. And now I will play a little 2-minute clip of him explaining from Mount Olympus what the truth about God is.
So the message of the mystical tradition is that God is real. It's the center of life. This use of the word God has very little to do with the way most people understand the term, and sometimes you almost feel it should be a different word. But the language of God, of course, is so much a part of our Western tradition especially, that we live with it and we interpret it. The relationship between God and the world is not that of creator and creature, where the creator is out there and the creature is over here. The relationship between God and the world is that between deep structure and surface appearance. Scratch the surface and you'll begin to penetrate the deep structure. You'll begin to see the inner life which is the life of God that animates things and lives within all of reality. The way to uncover that is to work at it. Judaism is a toolbox. It's a toolbox. It's a set of tools given to us to uncover that reality. The Jews of past generations, the ultra-Orthodox today will tell you it's God's toolbox. God gave us that toolbox in order to do the work. Some of us may say it's the Jewish people's toolbox. It's the toolbox we inherited from tradition. I don't know who made the tools. Doesn't make any difference if they work. The real job is to do our work and not worry about where the tools come from and exactly are they the best set of tools. Is it the only toolbox in the world? No. Is it the best toolbox in the world to do this work with? I don't know. I haven't tried any others. But I do know this is ours. This is our set of tools. And so it's the one we work with.
Okay. Okay, well, there you have it. I think that's pretty, that quote about halfway through, that the relationship between God and the world isn't creator and creation, but it's the relationship between deep structure and surface appearance. Okay, so God is the deep structure of essentially of the natural world, whatever that means. And then, of course, he has the chutzpah. That's a Jewish term. Chutzpah. I know you know all these Jewish terms, but he has the chutzpah to basically defending Judaism on that basis. Defending Judaism on the basis that none of it is true. Anyway, I don't know. Go figure. But he certainly made a nice career out of it until he got busted for, boundary violations. I think boundary violations is a really nice new invention because if you're on the side of somebody, you call it boundary violations. If you're not on the side of somebody, you call it sex abuse. So anyway, so Reconstructionism in its origin was what I described, Judaism as civilization, coming from Mordecai Kaplan. And however, it is it doesn't have any boundaries within the theology, so to speak. So there's several streams within it. Artie Green, or Rabbi Arthur Green, he basically took it in this pseudo mystical, amorphous, new agey, deep structure direction. And Charlie, he seems to have taken it into a kind of voluntarist. I don't know if he actually meant, when he explained what he thought to me, whether he actually meant that God is like a personal God out there, an actual person God who just lies and tells you what you want to hear or what's good for you. Or now I'm wondering whether he's using God in the sense of whatever it is that gives people's life meaning. And therefore, the revelation was not revelation in any sense that I would consider it revelation, but to him, it might be coming from God. I have a feeling that's maybe the case. But, you know, it's like trying to do a 100-meter sprint over quicksand, trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, what's the point? What's the point? You know, even if you run 100 meters, you don't get anywhere. You just get deeper in the quicksand. So that's my discussion for the day. I hope it's been useful.
Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, cui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium. Israel est tu rex, Davidis et inclita proles, nomine qui in Domini, Rex benedicte venis, cetus in excelsis, te laudat celicus omnis, et mortal vis homo, et cuncta creata simul. Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, cui puerile decus, prompsito sana